April 2008, Greenwich Village, New York. At a wine auction packed into a restaurant, some of the richest collectors on earth are bidding on rare Burgundy. The star lots, nearly 100 bottles of rare Domaine Ponceau wine, including a run of Clos Saint-Denis with vintages reaching back to 1945, valued at up to $1.3 million. One problem, a man in the room had flown in from France. Laurent Ponceau, the man whose family name was on every one of those labels. Minutes before the hammer, he had the lots pulled. Not because the wine might be fake, because it was impossible. Domaine Ponceau never made a Clos Saint-Denis in 1945. It first made that wine in 1982. Every rare vintage before that cannot exist. Someone hadn't just forged a label. They had invented decades of a wine that never existed, and nobody in that room could taste the difference. Ponceau went further. His own estimate, on the record, 80% of pre-1980 Burgundy sold at auction is fake. The man who consigned those bottles was a charming young collector everyone in that room knew by name. It would be nearly 4 years before the FBI knocked on his door. We'll get there. Because the real question isn't who, it's how. How do you sell wine that never existed for millions at the world's top auction houses? The answer starts with an uncomfortable truth. Of all the luxuries money can buy, wine is the easiest one to fake. Economists have a name for things you can't verify even after you've bought them. Credence goods. Wine is the textbook case. Think about it. A 1945 Burgundy. Almost nobody alive has tasted the real thing. What would you even compare it to? You'll see one statistic everywhere. 20% of all wine sold is fake. Here's a secret about that number. Nobody knows where it came from. Researchers have traced it, bouncing from article to article since 2013. Never back to an actual study. The honest answer is that nobody knows the true scale. Somehow, that's scarier. Here's what we do know, the mechanics. On the collector's market, an empty bottle of Petrus or Lafite sells for up to $1,000. A 2009 study of online auctions found the best predictor of an empty bottle's price was the price of a full one. Those empties aren't souvenirs. They're getting refilled. Provenance is just paper, auction records, seller photographs, letters from producers. All of it can be forged well enough to pass. And when a collector does get burned, silence. Sotheby's wine chief once rejected a cellar full of suspect bottles. Then watched the same collector quietly sell them through a rival house. Appraisers say the quiet part out loud. Many collectors suspect they own fakes and prefer not to know. Producers stay quiet too. Scandal is bad for the brand. So, a crime where victims won't talk, sellers won't look, and the true size is unknowable. How does anyone ever get caught? Usually one way. The fake gets too ambitious. London, 1985. Christie's auctions a dusty bottle engraved with the initials THJ, a 1787 Lafite, said to have belonged to Thomas Jefferson. The Forbes family paid $156,000, a world record for a single standard bottle. The seller, a German collector named Hardy Rodenstock, who said the bottles came from a walled-up Paris cellar. The billionaire Bill Koch bought 4 Jefferson bottles, by his own account, $100,000 per bottle. 17 years later, preparing a museum exhibit, his team called the historians at Monticello. Their answer? These bottles had no connection to Thomas Jefferson whatsoever. Glass experts went further. The engraving had been cut with a modern power tool, something like a dental drill, on a supposedly 18th century bottle. Koch turned on his own cellar. He found more than 400 bottles he now believed were fakes. He had paid $4.4 million for them. Then he did what only a billionaire can. He spent a reported $35 million on investigators and lawsuits, several times what the fakes had cost him. It was never about the money. He sued dealers and auction houses one by one. Most settled. one jury ordered a fellow collector to pay him $12 million. Koch's own verdict was bleaker. Quote, "That's why I stopped buying very old wines. When a billionaire with private detectives can't buy safely, no one can." But lawsuits are one collector's war, fought bottle by bottle. On the other side of the world, wine fraud was becoming something else entirely, an industry, and the young collector from the auction room were coming back to him. China, 2013. The country is in love with one wine above all others, Châteaux Lafite Rothschild. And that love created a math problem. China imported roughly 50,000 bottles of genuine Lafite a year. One industry estimate put the bottles sold as Lafite that year at 2 million, 40 sold for every real one. A 2016 state television expose found what was inside some of them, about 20% actual wine. The rest, sugar water, colorings, and flavorings. Police raid the factories constantly. 2013, $32 million of fakes in one operation. 2018, 50,000 bottles. 2023, 40,000 more. It grows back every time. Europe industrialized too. In 2020, Italian police broke a ring faking Sassicaia, one of Italy's most celebrated wines. A full supply chain. Wine from Sicily, bottles from Turkey, labels from Bulgaria. They even match the tissue paper the real producer wraps his bottles in, down to its exact weight, 22 grams. Estimated sales, nearly $500,000 a month. The producing family's response was the bleakest shrug in wine. Quote, "It is not the first case, and sadly, it won't be the last. It was our turn this time." 2024. Europol dismantles a network selling counterfeit French Grand Crus for as much as $16,000 a bottle. In Champagne, a producer carbonated hundreds of thousands of bottles of cheap still wine and sold them as champagne. He fled to Morocco. They brought him back. And this year alone, Italy, 2.5 million liters of mislabeled wine seized. England, 67,000 counterfeit bottles in 3 warehouses. This isn't history. It's happening right now. So producers stopped waiting and turned their bottles into fortresses. In Pomerol, Chateau Le Pin began hiding an encrypted radio chip beneath its labels, starting with the 2010 vintage. The chip maker's own words, impossible to reproduce, even by us. Chateau Angelus has embedded a microchip in every bottle since its 2014 vintage. Point your phone at it and the bottle introduces itself. Lafite seals its bottles with a bubble tag, a random 3-dimensional pattern designed to be impossible to clone, only checked. Burgundy's Clos de Tart joined with its 2024 vintage. Brunello's Biondi Santi seals its capsules. The arms race is global now. Behind the labels stand the chemists. One method, adopted by European regulators in 1990, reads wine chemistry like a fingerprint. Added sugar, fake origin, dilution, all visible. Lafite made the boldest move of all. It planted vineyards inside China itself. Labels printed in Bordeaux under non-disclosure agreements. Foil lined with a banknote-grade anti-counterfeit graphic. But every chip costs money. Smaller family estates lean on cheaper fixes, like QR codes, and say balancing that cost is a constant struggle. Full-scale protection is a rich chateau's game. And here's the catch nobody loves saying out loud. The chip authenticates the bottle, not the wine inside it. Refill a genuine empty through the cork, and the technology waves you through. The industry's best-known fraud hunter frames the realistic goal this way. You don't make fakes impossible. You make them too expensive to attempt. And yet, while the chateaux were armor-plating their glass, one of the biggest wine frauds ever prosecuted was already underway. It required no bottles at all, not one. A firm called Bordeaux Cellars, registered in London and Hong Kong, offered investors a beautiful deal. Fund loans to wealthy wine collectors, secured against their priceless sellers. Between 2017 and 2019, investors handed over nearly $100 million. Federal prosecutors later needed one sentence. Neither the wine nor the collectors existed. About 140 victims worldwide. In April 2026, a Brooklyn judge sentenced the man behind it, James Wellesley, to 10 years. No fake labels, no fake bottles, just wine's mystique weaponized. It's part of a wave, a Napa winemaker sentenced for passing off cheaper grapes as Napa Valley, a grocery wine buyer admitting kickbacks. Fraud follows a struggling market, and you saw in our last video how much wine is struggling. One wine writer summed up the whole story in 7 words, quote, "Wine and fraud go hand in hand." Which brings us back to the auction room. The charming young collector who consigned the impossible Burgundy had a name, Rudy Kurniawan. In March 2012, FBI agents walked into his home near Los Angeles and found a winery of lies. Empty Grand Cru bottles, printers, sealing wax, sheets of aged-looking labels, a counterfeit châteaux in a kitchen. He became the first person in American history imprisoned for counterfeiting wine. 10 years, $28 million in restitution. And by one documentary's estimate, up to 10,000 of his bottles are still out there, sleeping in collectors' cellars. Released in 2020, deported to Indonesia in 2021. The story should end there. It doesn't. By 2023, dinners in Singapore, openly recreating his fakes as a party trick, pouring them against the real thing. Everyone at the table knows that's what makes it legal. And again, most of the guests preferred the fake. Maybe the easiest thing to counterfeit was never the bottle. It's the story we want to believe. Real stories are what this channel is for. Subscribe and tap the bell so you're here when the next one drops.